We can't gather in person this year, but we've adapted. The 2020 Milwaukee Film Festival brings the best in film from across the globe and around the corner. And this year, it's all virtual, so the films and events are coming directly to you. Join us for the 2020 Milwaukee Film Festival, October 15th through the 29th. More information is at mkefilm.org/MFF.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kirsten Larson, and I'm the Programming Director at Milwaukee Film. And I'm very excited to welcome you to Day 6 of the 2020 Milwaukee Film Festival presented by Associated Bank. And this is the Nightcap presented by the Ubuki Family Foundation. So as you all know, we're all about voting these days. So in addition to our national election, don't forget to cast your vote for the Alan H. Budd and Suzanne L. Seelig Audience Award. And to do that, you'll visit the film or shorts program page at watch.mkefilm.org. You'll log in with your pass or ticket code, and then you click on the button that says Vote Now, and you'll be connected to the form that serves as your ballot. So once we get all of those votes at the end of the festival, we'll decide who our Audience Award winner is. So voting is very important. As you've seen in our pre-roll, we have a double up challenge happening. So thanks to the generosity of Judith McGregor and Richard Galloon, if we raise $75,000 during the festival, they will double it. So you can donate by texting double up to 44321 or go to mkefilm.org/donate to donate, or go to mkefilm.org/members to become a member and help us meet our goal. We are currently at $49,000, which is pretty good, but we could be doing better. And I always think becoming a member is the most fun way to support us and help us reach our fundraising goal. So you get lots of fun perks if you're a member. You get our monthly member screening, you get discounts on tickets and passes, and we'll just be forever grateful to you. So I highly recommend that option. So tonight is our very special Cream City Cinema double whammy of a nightcap. So we're going to start out with the film Scotch Tension, and we have Grant Brown, Samuel Casper, Logan Gott, and Andrew Harrington joining us. And then after that, we will talk to guests from Real Soul, A Gospel Music Story. So we have director Daniel Andera and producer Kenny Somerville. To start out, let's bring our guests from Scotch Tension up onto the screen. Hello, how are all of you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Hello.
Doing well.
So since it's such a big group of you all, I'll have you all introduce yourselves. So if you want to say who you are, what your role with the film was, and how you got involved with the film. I feel like we'll start with our directors, Sam and Grant. You can fight over who wants to go first.
Hi, I'm Sam Casper, director, producer, miscellaneous, pull it together.
I'm Grant. I'm one of the co-writers, co-directors, producer, and other pull everything together over the course of these many years person. So, yeah, let's go to Andrew.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Harrington. I was a producer and the first assistant director on this film. I got involved because I just asked Grant to help me with a project of my own, and to return the favor, he brought me in on this wonderful adventure. So that's how I got involved.
I snagged you. I did it.
You did.
Well, I'm Derek Schmidt, and I'm the cinematographer on the film. I think it was a similar situation. I was working on Andrew's film at the time, and Grant was also working on it, so we kind of linked there.
I'm Logan. I play Noah in Scotch Tension. I got to actually work with Grant for a couple days on another short film Reek by Zachary Krieger, and then got to meet with Sam and Casper and Sam and Grant, and get to be a part of this awesome project over a year and a half of shooting. It was a lot of fun.
Well, we're so happy to have you all here tonight, and I definitely have a few questions for you all, but just a reminder to everyone out in the audience, you can submit questions by just commenting on whatever social media platform you're on, and then we'll pop up on our screen and we can ask our very special guests. So be sure to submit. But in the meantime, we'll start out with our two directors. What was the inspiration and the motivation for making this film?
Well, Sam and I met back in college, so we've known each other for probably like 8 years now, and have made projects here and there. And it kind of started exactly 4 years ago, once we had just finished college, and we just sat down and had conversation like, all right, what do we want to do next? What do we want to make? And it kind of boiled down to two things. It was like, we want to make a feature film, whatever that looks like, and we wanted to make it a romance. And why that happened, I'm not sure. It was just, I guess, our headspace at the time. It was the story we kind of hadn't really been seeing around us, or we wanted to do it a little bit differently, I guess. So that was the impetus for starting this insane journey of Scotch tension.
Anything to add, Sam?
I don't know. No, we just making a feature film seemed like the next thing to do, so we did it, and
it's that easy. Yeah, we just did it. Yeah.
Well, this is your second feature, Sam, so really no sweat off your back.
I
Number
also,
two.
I made a few features as a high schooler.
Oh, excuse me.
Also, Andrew.
I stand
It's
corrected.
like professional. So one thing I'm curious to hear more about is, I feel like a lot of times we have films with one director who's the mastermind for the whole thing. What was it like being co-directors and co-writers?
Co-writing kind of came naturally. Like, we always just like coming up with stories and stuff together. It's just a great like bounce board to kind of have. And I guess like the writing process kind of looks more like I would write 10 pages a week, and then we'd meet, and then Sam would kind of read it. We worked opposite shifts. Like, I worked third shift, and then he would work like first shift, and we'd meet in the middle. So I'd be eating dinner and drinking a beer while he was having breakfast and some eggs, reading my terrible 9 pages that I scribbled the night before. And that's just how it went for about 4 or 5 months until we got the first draft done. I kind of let Sam talk about the co-directing process, though, which, yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience for sure.
Married to you, Grant, and that's both good and bad. I got married recently, and it was good preparation, honestly. It's just you love each other, and you get real frustrated sometimes. But at the end of the day, you got somebody to, when you're not up to par, you got someone to lean on during the shoot. So having that option was helpful, because there was times where I was way over my head. So having somebody else to defer to was very valuable.
Yeah, we called that audible a lot, like on the day, like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, Sam. You're going to kind of have to take the reins on this one a little bit. And it went both ways for sure. Yeah.
So something we're always interested about when we're talking to our local filmmakers is what it's like being a filmmaker in Wisconsin. And I know there are pros and cons to that. So this question can be for anyone with filming in our lovely state. What were some of the challenges and joys of filmmaking here?
I feel like we get a lot of like really wonderful, like local like cast and crew that kind of come on. I think one of the best assets we've ever found, Sam and I, in filmmaking is Craigslist, actually. And we just always find some really interesting characters who are ready to commit like 110% of themselves to an insane project like this. Dan Bell, who plays Paul, the alpaca farmer in the film, was one of those people who we found through Craigslist, and he kind of found us like half of our locations and actors. And yeah, he's just like a wonderful diamond in the rough that have just really wonderful local talent that are ready to give a lot of themselves to a project like this, which is obviously a lot smaller than something that's maybe made on either of the coasts or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say as well that we're all, I guess perhaps not Logan, but the crew, we're all attendees of the UWM film program. So our network there, in terms of being able to find people to come help us on set or help us with pre-production or help us with things in the background, that was a community we leaned on a lot. Were just the connections we made through that. So that definitely, in terms of being a unique to Milwaukee situation, those people in that community was instrumental in making this all happen.
And Logan, are
Yeah,
you
absolutely. I
local
think like,
to... Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, there's delay. Yeah, sorry. No,
ahead,
I guess
Sarah.
like to add to that, our network with like various lighting groups are all very supportive as well. Like there's like companies like Electric Sun and North American that are all very happy to help indie film projects, which has been very valuable.
Absolutely. We're getting a lot of good shout outs to some key Milwaukee film supporters, so we appreciate the promo.
Well, I see Ed in the comments. That's wonderful. Hi, Ed.
And then Logan, I was going to ask, are you local to Wisconsin as well, or were you an import for this?
Yeah, I was. I'm born and raised Milwaukee. I went to school in Milwaukee all through high school, and went to college up at St. Norbert College. And it's funny hearing you guys talk about Craigslist, because that's how I got into acting in Milwaukee, was responding to a Craigslist ad and just doing an audition in one of the buildings at UWM in the basement. And it was, hindsight, it's like, well, okay, that was a little weird, but it's really cool to be able to find a community like that and be able to see productions come together, and just however you can get it done is how you get it done in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. So we already have some audience questions, so I'll start asking those. Someone is wondering, did you film the story more or less in order, or did you do it piecemeal and then cobble it together in the editing process?
I'm just laughing because I saw a shout out to Project Rebellion, one of Sam's high school projects. Yeah. So yeah, we actually we always intended to shoot it in kind of 3 bigger chunks to kind of get that passage of time on screen. So within the chunks, it was all kind of like piecemeal, but it was always within like a set of pages in the script. So first chunk of shooting was the first chunk of the script. The second chunk of shooting was the second chunk, and the third chunk was the third one. But then within that, we kind of didn't do everything exactly in order. Like each day was the next scene of the movie, because that would be, I don't think that'd be any kind of feasible at our budget. But yeah, no, it did come together where all the summer stuff was shot in like late fall, and then winter we were all freezing our butts off and snow and 0-degree weather, and then we came back a whole year later to shoot the final part of the movie, and we've all lived a lot of life within that year, to say the least. So yeah.
We have another question from the audience asking about the haircut scene. And I don't know what they mean by calling it a time burrito, but we're just asking if it seems like he's getting his haircut in the pre-breakdown with short hair again. Was that intentional?
I'm gonna let Sam take this one.
What? The haircut kind of takes place. I mean, it takes place in the movie, but it also takes place kind of outside of the timeline of the film, and is a symbolic gesture of the rebirth of Mr. Logan got Noah in the movie. I don't know. What do you think about the haircut, Logan?
I mean, I grew that hair out for 2.5 years. Cutting that hair was, and I remember we shot that whole thing. We shot for the whole night and like got 2 hours of sleep, and then just like, all right, cool, let's cut this hair real quick.
Oh, you got sleep, huh?
Yeah, I remember there was still people coming back from it when we were doing that cut.
That was a big day.
I think when it comes to like the haircut scene, it was a lot of things going on at once, just for like me personally because of how long I've been growing out, but like also for the characters, it really did. I think a lot of things for like that transformation that Sam was talking about for both characters in those shots and stuff. So.
Yeah, but it does definitely take place in kind of like Sam was saying, like kind of outside of the story in a different plane of I don't want to call it just like pure metaphor, but yeah, it's not strictly speaking like that happens and then the next part of the story happens. So it's not intentional.
We have another great question from another local filmmaker, Shannon McInnes, who asks, what was the inspiration for the story and how did the content inspire the other aspects of filmmaking like cinematography and acting?
Inspiration for the story. That's a great question. I mean, I think it, like Sam described, us having some kind of marriage when it comes to creating art. So a lot of it is just an amalgamation of our own, I want to say our own experiences, but just our own, like distilling our own feelings down into something that's maybe a little more poetic. We're channeling our inner romantic poets and trying to do something with that, I guess. So there's nothing like specific that inspired it, but it definitely speaks to where we're at in a time of our lives, coming out of school, a lot of uncertainty, a desire for something greater than ourselves, to be with somebody other than ourselves, and putting that onto the screen somehow. And then, yeah, it was just a matter of coming up with a story and inspiring other people to bring their own creative energies and getting them into that space. I mean, maybe everybody else can speak to this, but during a lot of these shoots, we would just kind of take off time, not shooting, and just kind of like prompt people to like, I don't know. I love just having kind of like almost theater group activities where we can just like, hey, here's a question, or here's something where we're just going to sit in a circle and just kind of wear our heart on our sleeves for a bit to get everybody into the headspace of the movie. If anybody wants to speak to that.
I definitely remember the circles.
Yeah.
So there's another question, and this one will be a good one for Derek. What camera lens did you use during the production? Our commenter thinks it looked beautiful and is a beautiful state, so not too hard to do, but definitely well done with the cinematography.
Thanks. Yeah, we used 3 different sets of lenses, a different set each sequence, so each season. We were using a set of Nikon AIS lenses for the first, fall as M before she gets to the city. And then during winter, we chose something a little colder, more clinical, so a little newer, a Sigma art series lens. And then finally we went to Canon FD set for the last sequences. Again, more lens flares, trying to kind of bring in a lot of like natural lens beauty to the shots.
Something that I was interested about from Milwaukee Film standpoint is I know that the Milwaukee Filmmaker Alliance did a work in progress screening with you guys as you were putting together the film, and I would love to know how that experience was for you and what kind of feedback you got, and then how that translated into your editing of the film and the final product that we have today.
Those were some really incredible screenings, actually. Shout out to Milwaukee Filmmaker Alliance and Molly Bay, who helped put them together at No Studios, they have an incredible venue screening room there. We had 2 work in progress screenings when the movie was running about 2 hours long. And it's just a great, really valuable tool to have a group of people who haven't seen this thing that 2 people have been editing in a dark room for a year. And we got, not only do you get some really incredible feedback from people, you can just see how the movie is playing in front of an audience, know what's working well, what's dragging, what kind of stuff is really not clear to an audience. And then, from there, we took just over another half of a year, just really cutting it down, making it concise and clarifying a lot of the stuff. And that was one of the most incredible experiences, being able to screen for other like Milwaukee filmmakers too, who just have some really, really valuable insight into the process, I should say. So, yeah.
So we are almost out of time, but one question that I was definitely wondering about as I was watching it is, do any of you have like a background in yarn spinning or like familiarity with the spinning wheel? Because I feel like I've only ever seen it in Sleeping Beauty. And so I was just curious if that was something you guys already knew about or something you had to research for the movie, and where that came from.
Yeah, no, we didn't know anything about it.
And we still don't, actually.
We tried not to shoot too many real close-ups of it because we didn't know what we were doing.
We didn't even have like a working spinning wheel either. Both of them were completely busted. So
maybe a good story is we left there were 2 spinning wheels. There's the one in her workshop. There's the one in her workshop, which is a little nicer and more ornate. And then there's the junky one that she gets out of, that she tries to get from Noah. Yeah. We left it out in the field foolishly one night in between shooting days at Noah's shack location. And in the night, a storm blew a door off of its hinges and it fell directly onto the wheel.
Smashed.
So we show up and it's just in pieces. And, Sam is just a master craftsman and somehow manages to put it back together with glue and dreams. But that was a real low point for a minute there.
I was up all night cobbling it together.
Yeah.
Well, you guys did a great job faking it till you make it with the spinning wheel. I found it very convincing and I thought you were experts. So excellent work. And I thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and we can't wait to see what you all make next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
you having us.
Yep. Have a great night.
Yeah,
and now we are going to move over to our guests from Real Soul, a gospel music story, the director, Daniel Andera, and the producer, Kenny Somerville.
Hello.
Welcome. So similarly, I'll start out with sort of an introductory question and another reminder to the audience that if you comment on the social media platform that you're watching on, your question will show up on screen and we can ask our very special guests. So Daniel, to start out, I will ask, why did you decide to make this story?
And but just so the story was just because of love of music and specifically love of soul music. I was brought up with some older brothers and sisters that kind of forced 60s soul music down my throat, and they were all right. It's all really good. And then what I learned is eventually, like, everybody who's singing all those songs that I love and we all love, they all started in a gospel church somewhere. So I thought I would pursue that. And we were on a job. Kenny and I worked together, and we were on a job one day, and he said, "Oh, if you really want to check it out, my cousin sings over at this church." And so we just started with one person, and then another person, and then that person said, "Oh, you should check out so-and-so," and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 12 to 15 interviews and performances later, we got a movie. So, and it's just that simple.
I love it. It's beautiful when that happens. And Kenny, do you want to expand at all how you got involved as a producer with the documentary?
Well, Danny and I have an amazing friendship, both as colleagues and as friends, which extends beyond what we do in our working lives. We've been in numerous situations where our families have been together, our other colleagues who are also our friends. And when you develop that type of connectivity, you have these conversations, you have these ideas of your ambitious dreams and things that you may want to do outside of what we do regularly. And it was just an amazing situation because Danny loves music. In all those instances where we've been hanging out and partying together, Danny has both introduced me to some amazing soul music. He's hosted many events at his own home. He's played some amazing soul music. He's downloaded amazing music on a hard drive for me. And sooner or later, you start to have these conversations about,
Right.
the influence of how music can just change the mood of so many things, change the environment of so many things, and influence you in such a powerful way. And then suddenly, to use a word that's going to sound a lot like a pun, Danny was basically baptized in witnessing gospel music performed at a church and a choir, and it made him have that feeling of soul music 10 times over. So he basically became a curious. He smokes. How are these people doing this music that I love so much? And hey, when you got a guy that's that much of a fan of the art of music, you'll soon find out that soul music started in a gospel circuit. It started in the church, and being able to witness it from a gospel standpoint. Danny was raised Catholic. Catholics don't really get down like that. In a Baptist church, they've been getting down like that for a long time. So for him to witness that, I saw it feed his imagination. So I said, "Come on, let me walk through this journey with you."
Yeah, I loved that part in the movie where they say, "No offense if you're Catholic or Lutheran, it's just not the same." And I was like, that's true. It is true. Daniel, do you want to talk more about your first full music baptismal experience? Was it at one of the churches that was in the film?
It wasn't really just one. It was a bunch. It was a matter of, like, when we did our first interview of somebody, K. Powell, who was out there, and it's like, after you talk to him, it's like you realize how important music is. Now, for me, music is really important. I really like good music, and I will really tell you how much bad music is bad. And I've lost some friends because of it, but we're not talking about that right now. But it just means so much to people, and that is what I was drawn to. And I'm not a very religious person at all. And this music was like, it's just so, like, they're not kidding around. Like, it's when you see, like, anybody on American Idol, like, it's the level of talent. It's just like they're not kidding around. They're not, like, trying to hit a note. They are singing from a much deeper place. And you can't not respect that when you see this being performed. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So I still, like, I edited the movie and I've seen it a lot, and I still, like, get goosebumps during some performances because it's just better than other music. No offense, but it's just better. It's just so that's basically the impetus of that. So
one thing I was wondering about is with the editing, there's such a good balance between performance footage and interview footage. What was sort of your strategy as you were doing that editing process with the film?
initially, I was just hoping to do just performances, like check this out. This is so good. But then we got a hold of somebody like there's a historian in there, Bob Marovich, Grammy-nominated historian, I should add, who he started talking about the history of it, and I was like, I don't know anything about this, you know. And so I said, we got to include that in the movie. And then he was the one who started the whole sequence of like all these people that are influenced by it. And then got a hold of John Seeger in that also. He's more of my perspective, where he was brought up in a different religion and saw this and is drawn to it. And he's a musician. He had the same kind of thing. And he also, during his interview, you know, mentioned the fact like this music comes from a place where there's more stress on this culture and it just means more to them. And again, to the earlier point, it's the same thing. It just means more. So that's kind of how that started. So then it was like, then I interviewed we interviewed the performers that were in it, and then they tell their stories about what it means to them. And, you know, it's ridiculous how talented they are and how humble they are. It's unbelievable. Like, just when you interview these, you know, they're just like, I just want to reach somebody. You know, well, yeah, you reach somebody, because my hair was actually blown back during the performance. It was unbelievable. So that's how it became. That's the form that kind of evolved.
Mm-hmm. And with the different churches and singers and gospel experts that you spoke to, how did you decide what subjects you were going to have in the film and find people to talk to?
We kind of let the interviews dictate what was going to be said, you know. And we interviewed Charles Carter, who's, you know, part of the Masonic Wonders, who they're a pillar of the gospel community in Milwaukee. They have been forever. And, you know, he told his story about how he grew up in Mississippi and how he moved out of Mississippi and came to Wisconsin, and how like he was getting into trouble, but the music kind of saved him. And it was like, that's part of the story. That became part of the story. I mean, when we were doing it, you know, and Kenny was great with the interviews. But when we do it, I just would mentally note like, oh, that's going to make the final for sure. Like, it's just, so that was kind of, I mean, the story was, you know, I gave myself a writing credit, but it's more just an editor credit, because the stories the stories that the people told who are so talented, that's the story arc, if you will. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
And with both doing the interviews and filming in the churches, did you have to talk with people, do any work to like gain trust with your subjects and know that you're gonna portray them in an accurate way?
Yeah, I mean, some of the people, if you, like we said, it came from word of mouth and somebody else. And mostly we don't show up at a location and not meeting, or maybe we have seen that person perform, but just kind of show up and start talking to them. And as you may or may not know, Kenny can talk. Oof, can he talk? But I mean, you just get comfortable with somebody. It's like any other, you know, interview. You just get comfortable with them, and they want to tell their story. You know, they're humble about it, but if they're going to start talking about what the music means to them, they're glad to tell you about it. You know, so it wasn't a matter of like trying to pull stuff out of them. I think it was just a natural thing, because it is important to them. So,
but you do have to establish that type of rapport in a pretty short amount of time. You know, it's one of those things where churches are pretty guarded, and there's a level of protection that the people that are heavily involved in church definitely take on as a huge responsibility. You know, when you got a couple of guys that walk up and say, hey, we're here to shoot some footage about something, you know, the Catholic Church has its own fair share of times where people pulling up with cameras wasn't always for a very positive thing. You know,
That's for sure.
you have to break that, and I mean, there's a lot of that tension that guarded, jaded mentality that's going to exist in any church. What are you here to expose? What are you attempting to tell? What are you trying to put out there for the public? And for Danny and I to come in and make an attempt to tell this story, we have to first convince everyone how much we're influenced by what we've heard and what we've seen, and how breathtaking that we believe that all to be. And then, you slowly start to see that ice melt away. And then when you get people to talking about what it's really all about and exposing their own stories, what you have to also be honest about is a lot of this, and many people that we interviewed said this themselves, a lot of what the ability to do gospel, to partake in being a person that's strong enough and bold enough to stand up in front of a group of people and sing, is you come from a place of pain. You come from a place where you hurt. So now you got people talking a little bit about their own hurt scenarios. And it's amazing how, I don't even think Danny and I realized this in the beginning of making this movie, but that very sentiment echoes generationally, decades and centuries, because now you start to talking about African Americans in this country, place of pain, the abolishment of slavery, or the fighting for civil rights, place of pain, right? So you talk about something that's echoing fairly repetitiously, that's actually bigger than just a couple of guys that are trying to tell a story because we saw some toe tapping and some knee slapping and it felt rhythmic and it felt good. We talking about places of pain. You know what I mean? We talking about people that are telling their stories, and it's like resonating in a way with us that's like, we really genuinely got more than we bargained for with last film.
Yeah, I think all of the segments about the history of gospel music was really fascinating. And I know you have a few experts in the film, but did you all have to do any of some of that research yourselves? And how did that go for you?
I did a little research, and that was strictly as an editor, just to kind of like get, photos and things like that to use in the movie. But I mean, Bob Marovich and Valerie Daniels Carter is the other woman who just, she part of it interview we didn't use, but she was, talked about like it comes from a place of pain. It comes from, black people didn't come here on their own. They didn't come here like, oh, I want to go to America and work a lot. Like it wasn't that at all. And that's the start of it. That's the music was, subversive. And I mean, even that's like a great story in and of itself. We could have made a whole movie just about that, honestly, because Bob Marovich has written, the guy who our main source of this, he's written books about it, and you could do, but then it was more like I really wanted to do something more local, and the fact that the fact that all this talent exists, people would expect it maybe in Chicago, like all this talent, but it's in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's has a reputation of being a super segregated city. And, there's obviously a lot of violence and civil unrest these days. And the fact that it's in Milwaukee now it's a good time for this movie. My wife was right. I should put this thing out right away. So,
yeah, shout out to Andrea. She said, put it out, and we trusted her. She was right. Shout out to Andrea.
She's always right, Kenny. You must not know her very well.
So one thing I would like to hear from Kenny is, since you are a bit more familiar with this gospel scene in Milwaukee than Daniel was when we started out, was there anything that was surprising that you learned during the course of the making of this film that you weren't already familiar with?
Well, I grew up in a Baptist church, a church that's mentioned several times throughout the film, and a couple of people that still to this day attend the church, Greater New Birth, when they were much, much smaller. When my grandmother made our entire family go, and we grew up on 21st and Center, West Center Street, very urban neighborhood. lots of my own relatives growing up in that house. You know, I'm an only child, but I grew up with my cousins, my first cousins, as if we were siblings. So there's a lot of the texture that's intertwined through the film that I already relate to. But as far as learning things, as far as, you know, witnessing Greater New Birth become what's probably considered more of a mega church now, to witness some of the people that are involved with the church and how some of the performers aren't just members of a singular church anymore, but they travel. KP was one of the individuals that in his interview mentioned they go to about 4 locations on a Sunday. You know, that's fascinating because in my youth, I saw choirs that were automatically members of the church, people that were just bold enough to stand up and start singing. But the influence and the power of how much a choir can uplift an entire congregation to the point where they're now hired and brought in to visit multiple locations on a singular Sunday. You know, that's really the honey that's going to get people to attend, to come to a church and watch a performance. 9 times out of 10, people are tuning in and locked in because they're blown away by what they're going to hear from that performance. But anybody that's attended church long enough is going to tell you, you're going to get that good word if you stay long enough. And people that are now attending and getting their spirit fed and getting that food for their soul, it's coming based on that ministry that's coming after that performance. And it opened my mind up to so many other things. Like I said, even generationally, it makes me think about what was it like for Dr. Martin Luther King to fight during civil rights. We witnessed a lot of Dr. King's speeches. Those are well documented. But I can guarantee you what was happening before and after some of Dr. King's speeches was someone was singing. They were opening up with prayer. They were clapping, knee slapping, and they were singing. They were having church. And to witness some of the people that we interviewed describe what it's like to have church on a movement now, on the go, to witness these people being big enough and grand enough to take that act on the road. That's amazing. It's unrecognized. It goes without extremely high praise, and they don't want it. They don't need it. Anybody that's intertwined in this enough will tell you all glory be to God. They take the show on the road and they go to about 4 to 5 different churches on a single Sunday. That's amazing.
They're not doing it to be famous. You know, they're
Right.
not doing it to be famous now. But they're really good because they do it every single week and rehearsals, 2-3 times a week. And I mean, there's a line in the movie about it's the best music school in the world because it's just the voice is a muscle, and you work it all the time. It's going to perform for you. And I think we have a couple of very good examples of that in the film. So
You imagine a young man or a young woman. You imagine a woman that's maybe in her 20s and she's got a daughter, 2 years old, 3 years old. And she stands up in front of a congregation to sing, and she brings her daughter up there. That child is immediately facing fears, facing things that make most adults nervous, bashful to be in front of a crowd, giving an Easter speech. That Easter speech turns into singing a song. That turns into being part of a choir. You got people across America that pay thousands of dollars to send their kids to music school. You got a young man that at the age of 5, 6, 7 is playing drums, beating on drums at a very young age to the point where by the time he's a teenager, he's arguably is talented enough to compete with any band member that's been playing for years. It's the most amazing music school that can get introduced to these young individuals, all based on a faithful congregation. That's not what they're there for. They're there because they are attending church, but they attending church that asks a ton of them to be involved, and they develop this amazing talent at such a young age. It's a genuine phenomenon.
Well, I definitely think all of that talent and passion really comes through in the movie. So I'm so happy you were able to make it, and I'm so happy you were able to share it with us because your wife told you to release it. So yeah, more props to her. But thank you both so much for joining us tonight. And we can't wait to see what you all work on next. And we hope there's a great future for your documentary, Real Soul. So yeah, we really appreciate that we have it in the festival tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
So everybody, yeah, thank you, Kenny. Everybody out there watching, if you haven't watched Real Soul or Scotch Detention yet, you still have time. The festival ends on October 29th. And you can watch all of these films at watch.mkefilm.org. And I don't know, what are you waiting for? You could watch them both tonight, and you probably should. So be sure to vote for the election and for the audience award. And beyond that, I hope you have a great night. Thanks. Bye.